Namaskar, dear learners. I welcome you to this session on nitrous oxide. Today, we'll be discussing nitrous oxide as a greenhouse gas. We'll be looking at the emission pathways, the emission sources, and the mitigation options. You know fully well the issue of climate change is affecting us in everyday life. In fact, it is affecting each and every organism on the earth surface. Looking at the impacts of climate change, we know that we are in the era of sixth mass extinction. It is not only affecting the wealth of human beings, health of the human beings, and also all the possible, the resources, everything is impacted by climate change. And when you look deeply into the changing dynamics of climate change, the trends in the last century, the average air temperature has increased by 1.1 degrees centigrade, and it is reported that by the year 2030, the temperature may rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade more than the pre-industrial level. So look at the problems that we are facing because of climate change. And when you look deeply into the issue of climate change, we have to understand that two important aspects. One is the adaptation, the other one is the mitigation. When you look at the mitigation aspect, it is more important. Why? Because as years passes by, the kind of the pollution or the kind of greenhouse gas pumping into the atmosphere is increasing. And that is carries a lot of significance in the present day. Why? Because the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere is increasing year after year because of the developmental activities, because of the human pressure, because definitely when the population is increasing, human population is increasing, simultaneously the economic activity also will be increasing, and that is leading to pumping of more of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. When you look at the greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere, particularly the carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, these three are very important gases because their contribution to climate change is definitely alarming, and also there's a lot of potential is there. The mitigation potential is there. These three gases can be managed in a way that their concentration in the atmosphere can be minimized or in fact reduced. So when you look at these three important gases, carbon dioxide, it's a very important potent greenhouse gases. The second one is the methane, and the third one is the nitrous oxide. Today we'll be discussing about nitrous oxide as greenhouse gas. So as I said earlier, that the issue of climate change is affecting us, our existence, it's even threatened. And also, why? Because not only because of the changing climatic condition, because the kind of disasters, the hazards that is taking place year after year, it is increasing because of climate variability. And this hazard, extreme weather events, whether it's a flood, a drought, all kind of hazards, it's threatening our existence. Not only that thing, our economic well-being is also affected. So in this regard, we need to understand how important the issue of climate change is concerned, in what way the mitigation has to be taken care of. Now, technically, when you talk about the mitigation and adaptation, the point here is that why we are going for it. One is that we need to reduce the increase in surface air temperature. That is first point. The second important point is that every country is striving to achieve certain level of standard of living, in terms of education, in terms of economic activity, in terms of the well-being of their people or citizens. So everyone is moving forward to achieve certain degree of certain goal of pleasant experience for the citizens. This development, we call it as sustainable development, and that sustainable development is going to be affected because of climate change. So in other words, our goal to achieve sustainable development by the year 2030, whether in terms of poverty reduction or removing hunger or climate action or gender equality, whatnot, every aspect, all the 17 goals are triced or effort to achieve those goals is endangered by climate change. So that is the significance of climate change. So these three important points has to be taken into account before going further into the topic on nitrous oxide. Okay. Now, when I talk about nitrous oxide as a greenhouse gas, we all know that nitrous oxide, how it has been emitted into the atmosphere. We know the mechanisms. But very carefully, if you look at it, the concentration of nitrous oxide has increased since Industrial Revolution. It means that somewhere or other, Industrial Revolution, or in other words, fossil fuel burning, that is responsible for increasing nitrous oxide. That is a clear point to be understood. So the concentration at the present point, it is almost 330 parts per billion. So before the Industrial Revolution, the concentration was 270 parts per billion. Now it is 330 parts per billion. So why this increase in the concentration of nitrous oxide? In the natural ecosystem, if you look at it, the concentration of nitrous oxide is bare minimum. And why there is existence of nitrous oxide in the natural ecosystem? Because of the remineralization of soil organic matter. Okay, the nitrous oxide, nitrogen is present in the soil, and it has to be remineralized through certain biological processes like nitrification and denitrification. Just because of these processes, biological processes, nitrous oxide is emitted into the atmosphere. And in the natural ecosystem is much, much lesser, the concentration. I mean, it is very less. But why it is increasing? As I said, that human activity and economic activity, related economic activities, particularly the cultivation, land-based agricultural activities, fossil fuel burning. These are the important activities that is responsible for releasing more of nitrous oxide. Now the question is that whatever the concentration of nitrous oxide we are finding in the atmosphere, it is basically a balance between the sources of emission and also the destruction of nitrous oxide. One is the sources I have talked about. Human activity is the major source of nitrous oxide emission into the atmosphere. On the other hand, this nitrous oxide in the atmosphere, how it has been removed from the system, atmospheric system. This nitrous oxide is removed from the system by the process called photolysis and oxidation in the stratosphere. Now the issue is that this nitrous oxide, if it is photochemically oxidized in the stratosphere, the resultant product is nitric oxide. And this nitric oxide is having ability to remove the ozone, can cause stratospheric ozone depletion. So that is the significance of nitrous oxide. So nitrous oxide is acting both as a greenhouse gas and also ozone depleting substances. Look at the impact of the gas, particularly nitrous oxide. So we must take all the steps possible to minimize the emission of nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. That's the first point. Second important point is that I was just talking about the sources as well. Fossil fuel burning and the land-based agricultural activities, and even animal husbandry, improper manure management is also can release nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. And when you talk about greenhouse gas, this particular nitrous oxide is having an absorption band at 7.8 micrometer and 8.6 micrometer. It means that these nitrous oxide is having an ability to absorb the long wavelength radiations at 7.8 and 8.6 micrometer. So this is a very important point as far as the greenhouse effect is concerned. So now let us look at the emission scenarios or emission. What are the sources? As I told you earlier, the use of fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, are primarily responsible for releasing what you call nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. That is the first important source. What is that? The land-based agriculture. The second important thing is that animal-based activities. When you talk about animal-based activity, because the animals also will be releasing a lot of waste products, particularly the manure and all. This manure, what happens? This manure can definitely it is rich in the nitrogen and carbon source. This, if it is not properly managed, if it has been kept open, what happened? That nitrogen will be, due to certain biological process, microbial activity, that nitrogen will be released into the atmosphere in the form of nitrous oxide. So improper manure management is also responsible for releasing nitrous oxide emission into the atmosphere. So next, if we look at the other sources, as I told you in the natural ecosystem, the soil organic matter is also very, very important thing. When you talk about one minute. When I was talking about the soil organic matter, because see, soil organic matter is also rich in the carbon and nitrogen. This soil organic matter is also source of nitrogen, and that nitrogen, due to certain activities, particularly remineralization, this nitrogen will be released from the soil organic matter and will be released into the atmosphere. So this is the basic processes. And other sources is the residues, crop residues. When you talk about crop residues, because any residue, agriculture biomass, it is rich in the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, this basic thing. So this crop residues also, if it has been plowed back into the soil, this also will be source of nitrogen. Okay, the other other source of nitrous oxide emission is the volatilization and leaching off. When I say volatilization, because the nitrogen, when it is applied in the form of urea or any nitrogenous fertilizers, they can be released into the atmosphere through volatilization process. Ammonia volatilization is a very important thing. And whatever you apply, the nitrogen, the fertilizers particularly, it will be leached into the soil, deep into the soil, and that will form what? Nitrogen pool. And this nitrogen pool, because of the action of microorganisms, it will be releasing nitrous oxide. So these are the basic sources. But what are exactly the mechanism? What is driving the nitrous oxide into the atmosphere? So we have a nitrogen in one hand, the other hand nitrous oxide. So what are the mechanism? So the mechanism is very simple. It's a biological process, and the two important processes there, nitrification and denitrification. These are the two important processes. So now whatever we wanted to do as far as the mitigation option is concerned, we have to understand these two processes clearly. Now, nitrification. What is nitrification? So nitrification is a biological process. That means that this process is being mediated by microorganisms. That's the first point. Second is, nitrification is an oxidation process. It requires oxygen. Definitely for their processes to take place, oxygen is required. Aerobic environment is required. Third important thing is that this ammonical form of nitrogen, that has to be converted into nitrate, and from nitrate it will be converted to nitrate. This is a simple process, simple equation. So what exactly is happening is, in the case of nitrification process, certain organisms like Nitrosomonas, these organisms will convert the ammonical form of nitrogen to nitrate form of nitrogen. This is Nitrosomonas. Another group of organisms, then they are called as Nitrobacter. These Nitrobacter will be acting on the nitrate to evolve nitrate. So this process of from ammonical form of nitrogen to nitrate form of nitrogen is because of the organisms called Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter, and this process is called as nitrification. Okay, so when you go in deeper level, there are two processes, two steps were there. In one step, there is an enzyme called AMO, that is ammonia monooxygenase enzyme is involved. Okay, for converting ammonical form of nitrogen to nitrate form of nitrogen, the enzyme is AMO, ammonia monooxygenase enzyme. This enzyme is very, very important thing as far as the mitigation option is concerned. Okay, fine. So from ammonical form of nitrogen, it has been converted to nitrate. So what happens? Another process is called denitrification. In the process of denitrification, what happens is that this nitrate form of nitrogen, that is a product of nitrification, that is acted upon by denitrifiers, denitrifying bacteria. So these bacteria, what it does is that it will be acting upon the nitrate form of nitrogen to convert it into what? Nitrogen products like nitrous oxide, nitric oxide. Okay, so now what is the product? The product is nitrous oxide. So that is the end product of denitrification, and that is definitely what happened. It is released into the atmosphere. That is a problem. So now, when you look carefully, the process of denitrification, it is an anaerobic process. Okay, and a group of microorganisms like denitrifiers are responsible for the what you call the transformation, chemical transformation is because of these organisms, denitrifiers. The third important thing is that for denitrification to take place, what is required? There is a requirement for carbon and nitrogen. So in the initial step itself, if nitrate it is not there, as a substrate, So nitrous oxide emission will be reduced. So our step is to somehow minimize the availability of nitrate. Let us see how we will be doing it later on, but this is a very important step. Next step is that, see, the availability of nitrogen in the soil organic matter. If your nitrogen is somewhere been chelated or made some complex with organic matter, the release of nitrogen into the the soil system, that can be minimized. So what we need to do is that we need to take steps to reduce the concentration of nitrate in the soil and to form certain organic complexes in the soil so that the nitrogen get fixed in the soil and will be reused by the plants on a continuous basis. So this is the basic mechanisms that is involved in the nitrification and denitrification. So when you look at the mitigation option, based off your mind, what should I come to your mind? That how well you can minimize these two processes, nitrification and denitrification. Okay. Now, I was just talking about the mechanisms. Nitrification and denitrification are the most important mechanisms. As far as the mitigation option is concerned, that is a key aspect of today's session. So when you talk about the mitigation option, our first step is to increase the efficiency of nitrogen, because the main source for what you call nitrogen, particularly the land-based agriculture, is nitrogenous fertilizers. And we need to, So what we need to do is that we need to increase the efficiency of nitrogen. Fertilizer use efficiency has to be increased. So how to increase the fertilizer use efficiency? There are a lot of measures are there. Basic thing is that you have to provide the fertilizers at right time, at right amount. Whenever the plant requires the fertilizers, you need to apply it. So that is the most important aspect that has to be taken into account. So we need to take all the steps possible to increase the fertilizer use efficiency, in this case nitrogen use efficiency. That's the first important step. The second important thing is that we need to adopt certain strategies called integrated nutrient management. When you talk about integrated nutrient management, that is basically a concept which involves use of the biological menus, organic menus, biological materials, and also the synthetic fertilizer in right proportion. That is one important aspect of integrated nutrient management. The second important aspect of integrated nutrient management is balanced fertilization. And third important aspect is that whenever the crop requires, we need to go for fertilizer application and optimization. So this is basic concept of integrated nutrient management, and it is very, very helpful for increasing the fertilizer use efficiency and also to minimize the nitrous oxide emission into the atmosphere. And very key aspect of the integrated nutrient management is conservation tillage practices. This conservation tillage practices, as the name, as the word suggests, it's conservation because it's close to the nature. Whatever the practices that is inbuilt in the conservation agriculture is going to help with the agriculture production system, and also it is going to have a minimum of negative environmental impact. So that is a key aspect of conservation agriculture. So by adopting the conservation practices, agriculture practices, we can minimize the environmental impact, and also we can minimize the greenhouse gas emissions from the agriculture sector. There are chain of measures, chain of activities, interventions are there in conservation agriculture, but the goal is to minimize the greenhouse gas emission into the atmosphere. That's about the conservation tillage practices. And next one is that we know that certain soils are rich in nutrients, like micronutrients and macronutrients. So we need to go for soil test based fertilizer recommendation. When I say soil test based recommendation, is that you have to understand whether the soil requires the nutrient or not, what nutrient it is deficient. So by going for proper soil testing, we can understand exactly the amount of nutrients that is present in the soil. So only the balance can be fed by going for organic menus and also the fertilizers possibly. And this is a very key aspect because certain period of time or certain point of time, if you look at it, certain soils may be requiring certain amendments. Okay, because if it is it's a poor soil, it's having saline or some kind of problematic nature. So that soil that has to be amended first of all. organic amendments. There are many amendments are there. It has to be amended. Thereafter only you can apply fertilizers. Otherwise, whatever fertilizer you are going to apply, it will be wasted. It may be locked. It can be fixed into the soil. So we need to understand the soil characteristics, the characteristics, I mean the health of the soil. That's the most important thing that we can be get to know from soil testing. The other aspect as far as the mitigation is concerned is organic farming. When you talk about organic farming, it is a very significant approach. Why? Because you are not only taking care of the health of the human beings, you are going to take care of the health of the soil as well, the crop health. Everything has been taken into account. That's a holistic approach because it is more of a biomass based one. Whether the menus, when you use the menus, we'll be looking for the organic menus. When you use the organic menus as part of organic farming systems, what happens is that these organic menus will have a long lifetime. When it's a long lifetime, the kind of nutrient release from the organic menu is long lasting, at least for a long period of time, or in other words, during the crop growth cycle, the nutrient will be released. So in this case, what happened? Slowly and steadily, the nutrient is released, and that will be in matching to the needs of the crops. So a kind of match is there between the nutrient release and the demand of the crop. So that way, this is a very efficient process. Second important thing is that the soil health, when I talk about soil health, interesting point is that there are a lot of microorganisms are involved in the soil system, and their role is, cannot be overestimated. When I say so, that means there are multitude of microorganisms. They play a very important role in the biogeochemical cycling of nutrients also, even the soil health, and even the kind of biological, the mechanism, pest suppression. Many ways these microorganisms are helpful. And in case of organic farming systems, many a times our practices is helping to improve the soil biota. The soil biota means soil microorganisms. So this is a key aspect. And next one is that the nitrification inhibitors. So this nitrification inhibitors are very, very important additives that is added to, along with the fertilizers. As I said earlier, there are two important processes, nitrification and denitrification. In the nitrification, the first step by the nitrosomonas, that's a very key important thing, because there one enzyme I was talking about, that's called ammonia monooxygenase enzyme. So this nitrification inhibitor will be acting upon that enzyme, that is ammonia monooxygenase enzyme. By acting upon that particular enzyme, by inhibiting that enzyme, the process has been stalled. So that way, the nitrification process has been stopped, and that consequently what happened? The nitrous oxide released into the atmosphere will be minimized. Of course, this nitrification inhibitor use is it will be increasing the nitrogen use efficiency, because the nitrogen will be present in the soil system and that can be utilized by the plants. That's the key aspect. As per nitrification inhibitors are concerned, there are a lot of synthetic products is also there. DMPP is a very famous one. Nitropyrin is, Nitropyrin. It's a very, very famous nitrification inhibitor. Nowadays, even the plant-based products also been used as nitrification inhibitors. To sum it up, today we have discussed about the nitrous oxide as a greenhouse gas, and the emission pathways, particularly the human activities, are responsible for releasing more of nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. And also we have discussed the mechanisms, what exactly is happening in the nitrification process and denitrification process. And also finally we have talked about the mitigation option. In mitigation option, I was talking about the nature-based solutions, or in other words, organic farming, even the practices, agriculture practice, if it is close to the nature, that will be very helpful for minimizing the nitrous oxide emission into the atmosphere. Lastly, we have talked about the new developments in the case of nitrification inhibitors, particularly the biological nitrification inhibitors. We have talked about it. Thank you very much.